My badge was deactivated midday when they fired me. They didn't realize my account was the sole administrator for the entire cloud infrastructure I designed. Deactivating it didn't just lock them out, it triggered a security protocol that wiped the servers clean in 60 minutes. Her badge chirped red. That was the moment. Tuesday morning, 9:42 a.m., right between her second coffee and the internal scream she reserved for Tyler's weekly Synergy Pulse meetings. She stood in front of the glass turnstile, holding the limp plastic rectangle in her hand like a dead fish, swiping again. Red again. Red. The security guy, Lewis, sweet kid, once cried during a fire drill, wouldn't make eye contact. Instead, muttered something about instructions from HR and stared deep into his walkie-talkie like it held the secrets of the universe. Then her phone buzzed. One new email. Subject line, termination effective immediately. No explanation. No call. No walk down the carpeted hall with a manila envelope and a forced apology. Just you're done like a crusty post-it note peeled off a fridge. Jennifer didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't even blink. She turned around, walked to her car, sat in the driver's seat, and closed the door with a soft click. Then for the first time in 7 years, she took a breath that didn't taste like recycled office air and betrayal cologne. And while she sat there, engine off, her personal laptop back at home pinged once, a subtle silent flicker of code. Protocol Omega. Initialization sequence begun. They just tripped the wire. Now look before we go any further. This story is about to get wild. If you're one of the 97% of folks listening who haven't hit that subscribe button yet, maybe go ahead and fix that. Toss us a like too. It helps more than you think. Keeps the story team caffeinated and slightly less vengeful than Jennifer. Alright. Back to it. She drove home like it was any other Tuesday. Past the Wendy's she used to treat herself to after deployment weekends. Past the old strip mall that used to be a Blockbuster. How a vape shop / gyro stand, radio off, silence thick. Her mind was already racing, retracing breadcrumbs, checking digital tripwires she'd baked into the system years ago because Jennifer wasn't stupid. She'd seen it happen before. Brilliant engineers cut out without transition. Their work pillaged, their names forgotten. Not this time. At 10:27 a.m., halfway through a lukewarm mug of chamomile, she opened her terminal. There it was. Call Omega. Step 2 of 12. Contingency checksum initiated. She sipped, watched the rain trace crooked lines down the window and felt not relief, not rage, just clarity. 7 years. 7 years of holding that damn company together while frat brothers played agile theater and marketing morons named things like Cloudpoof and Vision Grid. And now they'd fired the only person who knew where the skeleton keys were buried. What they didn't know, they never bothered to ask, was that Jennifer wasn't just an engineer. She was the infrastructure. She didn't just build the system. She was the system. Every pipe, every lock, every blind spot she patched while they patted each other on the back for not understanding any of it. Tyler, the new COO, all veneers and vibes, called her legacy overhead in a meeting once, said she was not scalable. Cute, coming from a man who thought Kubernetes was a Peloton class. Tyler made one fatal mistake. He assumed redundancy was about them. Jennifer's redundancy plan had only one purpose, her. By 11:02 a.m., Protocol Omega was in Step 4. Diagnostic scrubs on backup nodes, silent crawl through shadow databases. Nothing erased yet, just ready. The digital equivalent of cocking the hammer and smiling. Her phone buzzed again. Voicemail from HR. Deleted. Second call, unknown number, declined. We're starting to realize something was off, but the real panic wouldn't start for another hour, right around 1:06 p.m. when the first cluster would go dark and no one would know why. Jennifer stretched, poured herself another cup, and cracked her knuckles over the keyboard. She wasn't done watching. She was just getting comfortable. The building used to be a thrift store. Jennifer remembered that. Back when she first got the job, hadn't even replaced the mannequins in the window yet. Some idiot had put a server rack where the dressing rooms used to be and asked her, dead serious, if cooling fans came and scented. She was 35 when she took the role, hired as a DevOps liaison, which really meant fix whatever the CTO's cousin broke. It was supposed to be a 6-month contract. 7 years later, only thing that hadn't changed was the broken HVAC unit humming like a dying bee colony in the ceiling above her desk. Jennifer never complained. She documented, patched, rewired, and rebuilt every part of the company's tech stack with the quiet obsession of a woman who'd been burned before. And she had. Her last job stole her architecture, slapped someone else's name on it, then let her go when she questioned their vision realignment. Betrayal still sat in her bones like cold metal, sharp, immovable. So this time, she didn't just build systems. She built systems inside systems. Invisible breadcrumbs, identity obfuscations, decoy accounts, and a heartbeat monitor script that only pulsed if she was still present. And behind all that, one name, hers, buried deep beneath layers of access keys, custom daemons, a documentation structure so twisted no one else could have followed it without a PhD in Jennifer. Her plan was never malice. It was protection, Like building a house with a single hidden exit only she knew about, just in case. Then Tyler came along. He arrived in a range where he parked sideways across 2 handicapped spots, wore his hair gel to a crisp like it owed him money, called himself a fixer, the kind of guy who ended emails with thought the cloud was a literal sky thing. Tyler's second week on the job, he held a town hall and said on a hot mic, no less, that we need to clear out legacy baggage and engineering and make space for high-velocity contributors. She didn't flinch, but something inside her did crack. Not like glass, more like ice. The first time he spoke to her directly, he asked, "So what do you actually do here?" She could have answered. She could have told him that without her, Data would be one spilled coffee away from extinction, that their uptime stats were only impressive because she manually rewrote the monitoring system to filter out false positives his pet consultants couldn't even identify. Instead, she blinked and said, "Just legacy baggage." Let him believe it. Let them all believe it. Because while Tyler was throwing beanbags into a standing desk budget and hiring project managers with motivational, quote, tattoos, Jennifer was building. By her third year, the system had outgrown the company's documentation. That wasn't by accident. She was the documentation. Every route, every daemon, every override protocol had her fingerprints all over it, and none of it pointed back to her directly. She'd made sure of it. An architecture of shadows, beautiful, dangerous, hers. They never saw it. They saw her as the old lady in ops, one who never smiled at happy hour and refused to use Slack emojis. They joked that she was on the spectrum of doom. What they missed, what they all missed, was that the server room ran like a cathedral not because of divine luck, but because she sweated it into obedience. She built redundancy into every single layer, but none of it was for them. No contingency plan ended in their favor. No backup script restored access unless you answered 3 questions only she knew. If any admin but her pulled the kill lever, the system wouldn't just lock, it would cleanse. Tyler had once asked, snickering, if they were cyber nuke-proof. Jennifer said yes. He left. She didn't. The truth was Protocol Omega wasn't a trap. It was a mirror. It only activated if the system sensed it was no longer safe. Firing Jennifer without offboarding her properly wasn't just negligence. It was the digital equivalent of breaking into a bear's den and farting. And now how that bear was awake and the ecosystem it guarded had already started to rot, they called her overcautious, said she hoarded knowledge. Hell, HR had once flagged her for not documenting team-wide processes, never mind the fact that her team was a Slack channel with one other guy who thought Jason was a Packaman. Humiliation? Sure, for a while, until humiliation calcified into intention. They thought she stayed late because she was slow. Truth was, Jennifer stayed late to sew her name into the walls, the ceiling, the crawl spaces of their digital empire, because someday, someone would try to erase her. And on that day, the system would respond not with a scream, but with silence, followed by a whimper, followed by fire. At exactly 1:06 p.m., 60 minutes after they nuked her badge like it was some overdue library card, the first backup node lit up and died. It didn't scream, didn't flash red and blare alarms like in the movies. It simply stopped existing. Node 3B in the East Coast cluster initiated a routine self-check only to find that its own authentication had been revoked by a ghost key. One Jennifer embedded years ago under the label Coffee Break Protocol SH. The purge started like a whisper in a crowded room. Over in the IT bullpen, converted storage closet with bad airflow, and a door that squeaked like it had asthma, Danny, the junior sysadmin with a perpetual Dorito dust mustache, blinked at his screen. Something was off. "Hey, I think the mirrors aren't syncing," he mumbled. "Just restart the daemon," mumbled Asha, eyes glued to her own monitor, half paying attention, half scrolling through some React tutorial she didn't understand but pretended to. Danny did. Nothing changed. In fact, our logs were gone now. That's weird. By 1:12, 4 servers refused connection. By 1:18, their shared credential vault responded with unauthorized access detected. This incident will be reported. To whom? Nobody knew. The system just said it like HAL with a vendetta. Danny called his manager, Jared, who was out to lunch, both literally and in every other meaningful way. Meanwhile, Tyler was upstairs in his corner office, practicing how to say synergize without blinking. At 1:26, one of the customer-facing dashboards froze mid-refresh. The loading spinner rotated and rotated, then nothing. That's when the first Slack messages started flooding the hash engineering help channel. Anyone else getting credential denied errors? Why is the vault returning 403s? Is Jenkins down? Guys, the staging environment just yeeted itself. And like that, panic started threading its way through the carpeted arteries of the open office. Jennifer? She was curled up on her couch with a blanket and a bowl of off-brand kettle corn watching reruns of Columbo. Every now and then, she'd pause to check her terminal. Protocol Omega. Step 6 of 12 core backup stack a purge complete. She didn't smile. This wasn't satisfying exactly. It was just necessary, like cauterizing a wound. By 1:31, someone finally tried calling her. The call bounced. Jennifer's email had already been deactivated by IT at 9:48 that morning. Automated policy. No override. Her phone extension had been reassigned by HR to some new hire named Travis, who now sounded very confused as irate product managers screamed, "Where's Jennifer?" At 1:36, a software engineer named Lily located the internal network map Jennifer had built 6 years ago, tucked in a private repo titled Definitely Not Critical Zip. It was a Picasso of abstraction, node hierarchies folded like origami, recursive naming conventions that spelled out limericks, access levels nested like Russian dolls. Lily opened the config index. One name was listed across all root permissions, all critical pipelines, all escalation scripts. J. Hale, and J. Hale no longer existed in the system. Lee's message to her manager simply read, "I think we deleted God." Jared finally got back from lunch around 2 o'clock carrying a lukewarm Chipotle bowl and the confidence of a man who thought DevOps meant doing yoga while deploying code. By then, the financial environment had begun shutting down. Reconciliation scripts gone. Cron jobs null. The system wasn't crashing. It was forgetting. Selectively, mercilessly, line by line. The logs didn't show deletion. It showed absence as if those parts of the system had never existed at all. And Jennifer, she was still silent. No tweets, no threads, no snarky subtext posts on LinkedIn, just a digital shadow tracing its way through the heart of machine that forgot who built it because her fingerprints weren't on the keyboards anymore. They were in the foundation, the walls, the pipes. You could kill the architect, but you better pray she didn't take the blueprints with her. Eiler's voice cracked first, not over the intercom, not in a meeting, but in a high-pitched, throat-strangled wheeze from the war room. A glass-paneled fishbowl on the 6th floor where execs like to pretend they were running NASA instead of a mid-tier tech startup with a mascot named Bitey the Squirrel. "Reboot the damn thing," he shouted, jabbing a conference table screen like it owed him child support. "Just pull the backups and roll us to yesterday." Silence. Then a shaky voice, Jared still chewing the edge of a tortilla chip, mumbled, "We can't." "You can't." Tyler turned, eyes twitching. "You mean you won't?" "No. Like, the vault says we don't have permission." Across the office, monitors flickered like candlelight in a hurricane. Client dashboards blinked out one by one. Customer success reps were whisper-screaming into headsets, trying to keep contracts from unraveling while tabs reloaded into voids. One woman was Googling how to send invoices by fax. In the far corner, someone tried to SSH into the mainframe and got a message that simply read, "Access denied. Root permission not found. System rollback unavailable." It was 3:14 p.m. By now, nearly every cloud-hosted environment had flatlined. Microservices were dropping like flies. Logs? Gone. Billing environment? Bricked. Their flagship product demo page, a lovingly animated walkthrough of their intelligent engagement pipeline, how redirected to a generic 503 screen with a sad squirrel icon and the words, "Bitey is taking a nap." At her house, Jennifer refilled her tea. Jasmine green, no sugar, no phone. Just the sound of soft rain against the window pane and the occasional croak of a bullfrog in the backyard pond. She liked the frogs. They never talked over her during meetings. Protocol Omega. Step 8 of 12. API token library expunged. She watched it happen in real time like a demolition slow enough to save her. At 3:27, Lily, yes, the same junior engineer who once thought Git was a Pachemian evolution, uncovered the architecture file Jennifer had buried in an S3 bucket labeled Churro Recipes v4 final zip. She cracked it open with trembling fingers. It was a diagram, a living, pulsing network tree that looked less like a cloud infrastructure and more like a subway map designed by a conspiracy theorist on Adderall. Every node, every dependency, every access level, color-coded, documented, and every single root credential tied to one identity. J. Hale Global Admin retired, 9:42 a.m. Not by choice. Lily's face went white. She turned to Jared and held out her laptop like it was radioactive. I think she was the only one. Jared squinted. The only what? The only everything. 3 seconds later, the first executive started yelling. By 3:34, the war room glass rattled from the sheer decibel level. The director of product screamed something about regulatory exposure, while the CFO asked if any backups existed off-site, only to be met with a slow, soul-leaking nod of the finance tech who just realized the accounting environment was nested in the same vaporized instance group. Tyler was pacing now. His watch buzzed, 2 missed calls from board members. His forehead glistened like a greased ham. "Just call her," someone shouted. Tyler froze. "She's locked out." "Then offer her money. I don't care if she's at Burning Man with no pants. Get her back in here." The words emergency consulting contracts started flying. Did numbers? $5K, $10K, $25K for 1 hour of access. None of them realized that Protocol Omega had already reached Step 9, identity token seeding, invalidated. No amount of money could stop what was now an autonomous self-protecting digital bonfire. At 3:41, a regional client sent a cease and desist. At 3:44, CEO's teenage daughter texted him, "Why is your company trending under #cloud collapse?" And at 3:45, Jennifer opened her browser, typed in the domain, saw the squirrel, and whispered, "Biddy deserved better." She took another sip of tea, pulled the blanket tighter, and watched the system she built like a cathedral no one respected collapse into ash behind bulletproof glass. Her phone rang at 4:02 p.m. The name on the screen, unknown number. The ringtone, silent. She'd set it that way years ago for situations just like this. She didn't even glance at it, just let it buzz itself into oblivion while she watered the succulents on her kitchen sill, hands calm, motions deliberate. Her tea was cold now, but that felt right. Some moments deserved to be sipped with a little bitterness. The calls kept coming. Voicemail after voicemail. Some polite, some frantic. One sounded like Jared hyperventilating mid-apology, trying to say her name between sentences that started with "please" and ended with "just a minute of your time." She muted the phone altogether. At 4:19 p.m., her lawyer called. She answered this one. "Hi, Barry," she said as if discussing a parking ticket. "Jennifer," he said, tone clipped. "They've reached out. Multiple reps. One legal, one tech liaison. They're asking if you'll consult. One-time access under a written contract. What's the offer? $10. Just a few hours. Say they need your help recovering infrastructure control." Jennifer let the silence stretch. Not for drama, for oxygen. "They think I can recover it?" she asked. Barry exhaled. "They do?" She nodded to no one. "That's cute." Then she opened her laptop, drafted a single email, and sent it to the contact address Barry forwarded. No greeting, no pleasantries, just a single quiet sentence typed in the body. "It's already too late." She clicked send, closed the lid, stared out the rain fog window where the sky had turned a soft gunmetal gray. That was the thing about Protocol Omega. Once it activated, there was no rollback. It didn't just deny access. It obliterated it. Root keys burned. Vault credentials re-encrypted with self-destructing salts. System backup scrubbed at intervals set to mimic entropy. Every login token that ever had her name on it was now digital compost, designed it to respond like a living organism to a fatal wound, not with repair, but with purging fire. Not because she wanted revenge, but because she'd learned painfully that systems are only loyal to the last person who fed them. And, Jennifer, she'd stopped feeding this one the moment they threw her away like expired printer toner. At 4:33 p.m., Tyler's office lights flickered. By 4:41, the finance department couldn't process invoices. 4:47, their main client portal returned a blank screen and a 504 timeout, traced back to a server that no longer existed and couldn't be cloned because the snapshot policy had been overwritten by something called Omega Cascade SSH. No rollback, no restoration, only the slow creeping realization that every second ticking forward was dragging their company backward through a digital meat grinder. Jennifer poured herself a glass of wine, not a celebration, not a toast, just ritual, like closing the hatch after a storm passes. At 5:02 p.m., Barry texted her, "They're escalating to the board. Want to negotiate?" She replied once, "They can't. There's nothing left to negotiate with." She didn't watch the fallout. She didn't need to because Jennifer knew exactly where every bone was buried, and now so did the fire. By Wednesday morning, the boardroom smelled like stale coffee and the hot, nervous sweat of people realizing they'd misjudged the only person who ever read the onboarding manual twice. 8 directors on Zoom, 4 in the room, one pacing back and forth like a coked-up weatherman trying to predict a digital hurricane that had already flattened the town. "This is unacceptable," barked the head investor, a man named Martin with a voice like a chainsaw in a courtroom. "We're talking millions in SLA breaches. Government clients are threatening to pull contracts, and your systems are still down." Tyler adjusted his collar, which had somehow become tighter since yesterday. "We're working on it. Our team is investigating restoration." "You had a team," Martin cut in. "You fired the team. You fired the one person who apparently knew how to keep this operation duct-taped together." Tyler blinked. "With respect, Jennifer was a bottleneck. We had no idea she held global credentials or documentation." "No succession planning?" another board member asked. "Not even a transition folder." "Tyler, how the hell did you not know who held root?" "She siloed information." Tyler snapped his voice too loud. "She made herself irreplaceable on purpose." IT, represented by Jared, now visibly sweating through a wrinkled flannel, jumped in defensively. "She wasn't on the official root access logs. We checked. She wrote the access log software." Someone else shouted, "It was the logs." And just like that, the shouting match began. Tyler blamed IT for not flagging her dominance in the architecture. IT blamed HR for terminating without notifying engineering. HR, represented by a shell-shocked intern named Megan, who'd only been on the job 3 weeks, offered the weakest counterpoint known to man. "I just clicked the offboarding button in Bamboo HR." A beat of silence. Then from the far end of the table, CFO muttered, "We're gonna get sued." Everyone paused. They all knew it was true. By 11:20 a.m., Slack had become a digital trench war of finger-pointing, panic gifs, and scrambled attempts to piece together what data, if any, still existed. Somewhere in the mess, someone leaked a private message from the CTO to a product manager. The message read, "Why the hell did we fire her without an asset transition? Who signed off on this? Jesus Christ. Flying blind." It went viral internally within minutes. Someone turned it into a meme. Others used it as a makeshift status update. Tyler tried to initiate an all-hands call, but the Zoom room maxed out then crashed. His follow-up video filmed from his car, face bathed in the harsh light of dashboard LEDs, was clipped, reshared, and auto-captioned with the phrase, "We are exploring restoration opportunities through external partners." Someone edited into, "We are exploring which organ to sell for ransom." Jennifer saw none of it. She wasn't in Slack. She wasn't on LinkedIn. Her name, like her credentials, had been scrubbed from the system, but that didn't mean she was gone. She was there in every shadow file they couldn't decrypt, in every cron job that now executed nonsense, in every customer's dashboard that spun and never landed. She sat at her desk now working on her own codebase fresh, minimal clean. She wasn't gloating. She wasn't laughing because this wasn't revenge. This was necessary. They had built a company on her spine and then acted surprised when yanking her out snapped the whole damn skeleton. At 2:47 p.m., the CTO submitted his resignation, effective Friday, cited philosophical misalignment on infrastructure governance. Tyler forwarded the resignation to the board with a quick note, "We'll find someone more aligned with agile recovery." 3 board members didn't even respond. One sent back a single sentence. "You might be next." Jennifer closed her laptop at 5 p.m. on the dot. She didn't need to hear them scream anymore. She just needed them to listen. The file was still on her laptop, tucked inside a folder called Old Recs, right between a tax spreadsheet from 2018 and a half-finished PowerPoint titled "Why Single Sign-On Shouldn't Be Optional, You Morons." She hadn't opened it in years, but the file name hit like a pulse of muscle memory. Ops Risk Mitigation Proposal, JHAL Fine Alf 3, PDF. Jennifer double-clicked. The document bloomed onto the screen. A clean, meticulous layout she'd once poured 20 unpaid hours into after watching a competitor implode due to sloppy offboarding. She had submitted it back when the company was still using folding tables for desks before the rebrand, before Tyler, before the ping-pong table, before she stopped believing anyone upstairs could read past a bullet point. She'd written it at night quietly, methodically, because she believed it mattered. It outlined everything: account transitions, access audits, credential lattice maps, contingency flowcharts for every core system. And on page 17, a bold underlined header, Section 6.2, Kill Switch Scenarios. She read the paragraph beneath it out loud, soft and bitter like a bedtime story no one wanted. In the event a root-level architect account is terminated without credential continuity and automated credential signals fail to validate administrator integrity, failsafe protocol may interpret this as a hostile breach. In this case, auto-sanitization procedures may activate, rendering restoration impossible without preloaded off-switch tokens. They didn't even ask her what that meant. They never responded. The proposal had been marked not aligned with company priorities and quietly buried. Tyler once mocked it during an offsite, called it paranoia wrapped in PowerPoint, laughed in front of the whole team, told her to stick to the keyboard stuff. Jennifer remembered nodding and excusing herself early that day. She'd driven home in silence and added Step 12 to Protocol Omega. Now, years later, she read the document again, not with rage, not even with pride, with clarity. It had always been there. The warning, the manual, the one message that could have saved them all. They never read it. They chose not to. She scrolled to the footer, updated the timestamp to today's date, then exported it to PDF and uploaded it. Not to LinkedIn, not to her blog, but to a forum known only to those who understood the weight of uptime guarantees and the sleepless nights of holding entire infrastructures together with duct tape, gum, and sheer spite. The title of her post, "When You Fire Your Architect, Know What You're Firing." She didn't sign it. No name, no initials, just the document. The thread exploded in minutes. People reposted it with captions like, "This is terrifyingly real. I've been there. This woman deserves a statue. Whoever wrote this, thank you for saying what we've all screamed into the void." A reply from someone in Sweden, Protocol Omega. "I thought that was an urban legend." Jennifer closed the tab. She didn't care about the likes or the applause or the digital pats on the back. She cared that someone finally read it, that someone listened. Outside, under rolled low and steady across the hills, her succulents glistened with raindrops. Inside, her terminal still pulsed with quiet confirmation logs, step 11 of 12 complete final access tables over it, and she shut her laptop. This wasn't the end of something. This was the world finally catching up to the warning she gave them years ago. Too bad no one thought to open the damn PDF. Saturday, 8:17 a.m. The company website, once a jittery mosaic of buzzwords, parallax scrolls, and pictures of grinning interns high-fiving over dashboards, now displayed a single brutal line of text. 503, service unavailable. Bitey. The squirrel was gone. So were the login forms, the status pages, the onboarding wizard with the cloying pop-up that said, "Ready to cloud harder." All of it vaporized. The infrastructure hadn't just failed, it had ceased to exist. Vendors woke up to expired API keys and auto-canceled contracts. AWS invoices flatlined. Monitoring tools returned gibberish. One customer support integration sent an alert at midnight that simply said, "Your system heartbeat has stopped. Do not attempt resuscitation." No backups. No logs. No anything. At 9:12 a.m., a regional compliance officer filed a breach notification on their behalf, not because they asked, because it was now legally required. Jennifer read the notice while eating toast with almond butter and exactly 3 blueberries. She liked symmetry. She didn't gloat. She didn't post a victory thread or upload some smug GIF captioned "Guess who had root." She just watched the ash settle, and then her inbox pinged, not the corporate one that was long gone. Her personal one, quiet, clean, and now blinking with a new LinkedIn message from Ava Langston, VP of Talent Acquisition. Orion Tech saw your forum post about risk planning. Elegant and well chilling. We're hiring a CTO. Would love to talk if you're open. Big budget, no frat boys. Also, we read proposals around here. Let me know if you're interested even just to chat. Jennifer stared at the message, and something inside her flickered. Not adrenaline. Not vengeance. Hope. A strange, careful kind of hope. Like finding a green shoot in a field of soot. She clicked Ava's profile. Women-led firm, lean structure, real code in the leadership bios. They were building tools for disaster recovery infrastructure. Irony at its finest. Jennifer took another bite of toast, thought for a minute, then opened a new tab and typed Red Canopy Dev, a domain she'd quietly bought years ago. She picked the name after watching a time-lapse of a forest fire where days after the blaze, buds pushed through blackened soil beneath a red leaf tree still standing. She hit enter. Nothing yet, just a placeholder. But that was about to change. At 10:32 a.m., she spun up a new project scaffold. Clean, elegant. No spaghetti, no secrets. She pulled up her notes, the ones she'd written over the last 3 years, the blueprints for a system that would never need a protocol omega because its foundations weren't built on silence and theft. She wrote 4 words in the new README. You don't erase me. And beneath it, you hire me or you get out of my way. She hadn't written those lines for the world. She'd written them for herself. By noon, she'd replied to Ava. Short, direct, clean, interested. Let's talk. Because this wasn't just the death of a cloud. It was the rebirth of the woman who once built it and was finally done building for people who didn't know her name. Monday, 6:45 a.m. For the first saw a latte was poured in the boardroom that used to pretend it ran the world. Before anyone on the now former IT team could Google cyber resilience consultant, before Tyler could rehearse the phrase lessons learned in front of his mirror, Red Canopy Dev went live. No launch fanfare. No ad campaign. Just a quiet ripple. A black and white landing page. Clean code. No animations. No BS. Centered at the top. Bold serif font. Founded by the woman you shouldn't have fired. That was it. No name. No company history. No mission vision values. Fluff. Just that line standing like a gravestone with a pulse. Clicking about redirected you to a single paragraph. It read, I don't build for companies that gamble with trust. I don't design for execs who measure engineers by their smile count at happy hour. And I don't fix fires I warned you about 3 years ago. Build systems that respect the people behind them. If you get it, you get it. The blog had 1 post. No comments. No trackbacks. No fluff. Title, You Never Had Root. It wasn't a rant. It was a scalpel. 3,000 words of tightly coiled insight on mismanagement, on offboarding, on the deep arrogance of leaders who mistake silence for passivity, on how trust, once broken, doesn't vanish. It evolves into contingency plans with teeth. She described in abstract what it meant to be the only one in the room who knew where the cables actually went and what happened when the people in charge believed that person was disposable. One sentence landed like a punch wrapped in silk. We document your future, then you forget our names. Another, infrastructure is invisible until it isn't. Then you pay, not just in dollars, but in absence. And the final line, sharp, elegant, irreversible, you taught me that building alone is risky. Burning it down, that's art. The post hit Reddit within the hour. Hacker News by lunch. Dev Twitter turned it into a manifesto. One thread quoted her and simply said, this is what happens when you mistake quiet competence for compliance. By mid-afternoon, 5 startups had emailed her job offers. 2 VCs requested intro calls. One journalist called her a digital arsonist with integrity. She declined the interviews. She didn't want a platform. He'd already built one. Back at her old company, what was left of it, Tyler paced the legal floor, chewing antacids like Skittles while outside counsel explained the term constructive sabotage in a tone normally reserved for graveyard instructions. Someone finally asked in a whisper, do we even know what she took? Another answered, she didn't take anything. Pause. She just stopped giving. That was the final trace. Not a virus, not a worm, not a hack. Just the clean, Quiet withdrawal of a woman who had held their system together, not with duct tape, but with grace. And when they pushed her out, she took that grace with her. Jennifer sat on her porch as the sun slid down behind the trees. Laptop closed, hands still, calm, not triumphant, not gloating, just whole. They didn't just lose data. They lost the only person who knew how to make it matter. Thanks for joining the fun, you office survivors.